Yeah.
Welcome back to the Gridiron Expert. When you lose 20 of 22 starters from a national championship winning team, you're expected to take a little bit of a step back. And that's exactly what LSU did in 2020. The Tigers went just 5-5 last season. But when you look deeper into it, you realize that getting to 500 really wasn't all that bad. Isn't that bad when you consider you lost so many starters? Isn't that bad when you consider you're playing an all-SEC slate in the middle of a pandemic? Not that bad when you consider you lost your starting quarterback, Myles Brennan, earlier in the year. Not that bad when you consider Bo Pelini was on your coaching staff. The Tigers clock in at number 22 in our early Gridiron Expert Top 25. And many are going to say, well, how can you put a team that was 5-5 last year? How can you put a team like that in your top 25? Well, here's why. First off, Ed Orgeron went in and cleaned house. Brand new offensive coordinator, brand new defensive coordinator. He was infuriated, disgusted, disappointed with how poorly his Tigers played in 2020. Again, just going 5-5. Myles Brennan is back and healthy in the middle of a quarterback battle with Max Johnson. A battle that we expect Myles Brennan to win. But you cannot take away from the fact that Max Johnson played extremely well down the stretch, including leading the Tigers to a victory at Florida at the end of the season. On top of that, one of their top wide receivers, Kayshon Boutte, returns. He's going to be the leading wide receiver for whoever's under center, since Terrace Marshall and Jamar Chase, of course, are both gone now to the NFL. John Emery is back in the backfield at running back, and that's just to name a few players on the offensive side of the ball. Defensively, the entire defensive line returns, along with maybe the best cornerback in America in Derek Stingley and Eli Ricks. They're leading that secondary and leading a defense that will be drastically improved in 2021. Obviously way better than anything Bo Pelini did in 2020. On top of all of that, you look at how much talent LSU has, how much depth is there, and obviously the coaching job that Ed Orgeron has done. We knew they were going to take a step back last year. The Tigers look poised to bounce back in 2021. That is why they clock in at number 22. That is why we believe they can have a legitimate bounce back year. Does the schedule allow for it, though? We believe it can happen, but will it happen? We take a look at LSU's schedule going into 2021. And right off the bat, I love the first game at UCLA on September 4th. That's going to be a fun one, guys. That's going to be very, very fun. Out there in the Rose Bowl, not very often we see any really SEC team playing that far out west, especially at the historic Rose Bowl. And you look at UCLA and the job that Chip Kelly's doing out there, he's not doing a great job, but he is improving this team. We saw UCLA take a major step forward last year in the very short Pac-12 season. They have a very dangerous dual threat quarterback in Dorian Thompson-Robinson, someone that's going to test this LSU defense early in the year. We're going to get to see what both these teams are made of. Both teams looking to have a bounce back year. Both teams looking to take a major step forward. UCLA had been down in the dumps obviously longer than LSU has. Only 1 year for the Tigers. I wouldn't even say they were in the dumps for that matter. But this is going to be a tricky non-conference game, one the Tigers cannot afford to overlook. Things lighten up a little bit after that. McNeese, Central Michigan, both many would assume would result in wins for LSU. They then traveled to Mississippi State, a team they lost to 44-34 last year in Death Valley. And again, that was the first game of the year with Mike Leach, KJ Costello, a name we weren't even talking about by season's end. Kind of caught LSU a little bit off guard, and we saw how much LSU was missing those starters that they had from that national championship team the year prior. We saw that. So Mississippi State shocked the country. LSU was 6th in the nation. They went in there, won by 10, and immediately everybody thought Mississippi State was a team to beat in the West, possibly, outside of Alabama, and they tanked. They flopped. Whether or not the Bulldogs bounce back in 2021 remains to be seen. Whether Mike Leach can work some magic and maybe discipline his players a little bit after their disgusting acts in their bowl game against Tulsa remains to be seen. But LSU traveling to Starkville for their first SEC game of the year. It is right here, guys, from October 2nd to October 23rd that I believe is the biggest stretch of LSU's season. From October 2nd to October 23rd, that is the 4-game stretch to me that is going to define LSU season. It's going to show whether or not they are right there with Alabama, making November 6th matchup so big and maybe determining who wins the West, or whether LSU is going to be still middle of the pack, 8 wins, 9 wins, somewhere around there. Not a bad year, better than last year, but not maybe to the level people want them to be. You start with Auburn. LSU lost to Auburn 48-11 last year. It was abysmal. It was a horrible performance. And Auburn now is under new management, as we know, with Brian Harsin coming in from Boise State, the Tigers cutting ties with Gus Malzahn. They've got Bo Nix. They've got Tank Bigsby. They've got talent there to contend, but is Bo Nix even ready to take that next step? Is Bo Nix ready to become an elite quarterback? Tank Bigsby is one of the best in the SEC, but is the line there to help him out? Will LSU's defense be able to shut him down, considering they return all defensive line starters? Again, we're not making predictions for any of these games here, but I'm telling you, I don't know if Auburn's going to have the season that many expect or many want them to have. LSU absolutely also out for revenge in this game after losing by 37. At Kentucky, a major trap game for LSU here. Cannot afford to overlook the Wildcats. I know a lot of you LSU fans will scoff at that and say you think you're just going to annihilate the Wildcats. It's not true. Maybe you do, but it's not a surefire victory. Mark Stoops continues to do an amazing job out in Lexington. He's recruiting extremely well. He's utilizing the transfer portal extremely well. And Kentucky is one of those teams that could be a major surprise in the SEC East, just like they were a few years ago when they had that 10-win season and were really one win away against Georgia from winning that division. Do not sleep on the Wildcats this year, sandwiched between an interesting game at Auburn and then the Florida game, which I could see LSU possibly looking forward to, on the road at Lexington and a potentially sold-out stadium. Hopefully we can have sold-out crowds again. Kentucky is one of those games that I would have circled on my calendar as a trap game for LSU. And, of course, it's grouped into this key stretch that we have here. Florida on October 16th. Always a classic between LSU and Florida, and last year's was no exception. Thanks to Marco Wilson throwing the shoe, LSU was able to pull off a stunning upset in the Swamp and ultimately ruined any slim hope that Florida had of making the college football playoff, even though they still made the SEC championship game. But, of course, when you watch this game on October 16th, the highlight of Marco Wilson throwing the shoe, and LSU winning the game in the dense fog down the Swamp will be on replay over and over and over again. It's always a classic between the Tigers and the Gators. This year, LSU hosts in Death Valley. If it's a night game in Death Valley, you might as well say goodbye to the Gators, who lose just about everybody from that historic offense last year. No Kyle Trask, no Kadarius Toney, no Kyle Pitts, no Trayvon Grimes. And the defense with Todd Grantham, Bo Pelini and Todd Grantham were up there as maybe the top 2 worst defensive coordinators in the SEC last year. So, you have Florida there. Could be a classic there. Depends on how well Dan Mullen works with Emory Jones. And then at Ole Miss on October 23rd, Ole Miss's offense to me is going to be semi-similar to what Florida's offense was last year. Lane Kiffin's doing a phenomenal job down in Oxford. He's got a great quarterback in Matt Corral. If he cuts down on his interceptions, Ole Miss and Matt Corral are going to have one of the best offenses, not just in the SEC, but in the country. Last year's game against Ole Miss, LSU won in Death Valley 53-48. Wouldn't surprise me, guys, if the score was relatively similar in 2021. It's going to be a classic in Oxford. Ole Miss just needs to improve on cutting down the turnovers and improving that defense. They fix those, they might be able to make their way up in the tiers of the SEC West. But the game in Oxford, not going to be easy. These 2 road games for LSU are very tough against Kentucky and Ole Miss. And that's why this 4-game stretch is so key. Because let's hypothetically say that LSU starts 4-0. Maybe they start 4-0. Well, let's say they beat Auburn 5-0. Let's just hypothetically lose to Kentucky 5-1, lose to Ole Miss 5-2. The game against Florida is key. 6-2 or 5-3. But the fact of the matter is that if LSU drops 2 games in this stretch here, in this 4-game stretch, this game against Alabama means nothing. Because I can almost promise you that Alabama's not going to lose 2 games, especially within the conference. LSU has to only lose 1 game in conference from September 25th to October 23rd to make this game against Alabama even worth mentioning, to make it even slightly intriguing. Because for years we always talked about how that's the SEC West Championship. If LSU has 2 losses in conference, it doesn't matter. And the game is, of course, in Tuscaloosa at Bryant-Denny Stadium. Makes things even that much worse. So obviously it'll be fun to watch. but it won't be as important if LSU has 2 losses. That's why this 4-game stretch here is so key for Ed Orgeron and the Tigers. They get their bye week, as always, before the Alabama game, and then they close out with 3 straight home games against Arkansas, ULM, and Texas A&M. And I think many would say they can take care of business against Arkansas and ULM. It's a matter of if they can take down Texas A&M or not, who many believe is the second best team in the West going into 2021. Jimbo Fisher is building something there. They're riding a lot of momentum after that Orange Bowl victory over North Carolina last year. But they lose Kellen Mond. They lose a handful of other key starters. Right now, with Haynes King as their quarterback, I can see them relying heavily on the run early on until he gets his feet wet, until he finds his footing. Hopefully he will have that done by November 27th in the season finale. But in Death Valley, of course, can't underestimate the Tigers. It's not an easy task for anybody to come in there and steal a win. But this could be a potential top 10, top 15 matchup depending on how the Tigers fare. When you look at the FPI guys, they do not feel very confident in LSU this year. They have them going 7-5. 7-5 for the Tigers this year would be a major disappointment. Everybody would be calling for Ed Orgeron to get out. And I will say right now that I disagree with the Football Power Index here. I disagree with them wholeheartedly. Again, we are not making predictions. I'm not making predictions on any of these games. That will come later when we predict every single team over the course of the summer. But I do not think LSU goes 7-5. And I think that is honestly a disgrace, from the FPI. The Tigers are better than that. Again, they have the talent for it. They have the depth for it. They have the coach for it. It's just a matter of if they can work well with these new coordinators and if they can steal a few wins here and there and if they can survive this 4-game stretch. That is the key for LSU in 2021. But 7-5, not feeling it. It's going to be better than that. So guys, thank you so much for watching us here at the Gridiron Expert on YouTube. Make sure to continue to like, comment, subscribe, share our videos. Also, make sure to check out everything down in the description below. Exclusive content for you year-round that you do not want to miss. So make sure to go give it a look. And make sure to hit that notification button, guys. We are working through these schedule previews through the top 25 teams. You never know which team is coming up next. Number 21 is going to be tomorrow. Who's it going to be? Hit that notification button so you don't miss it and so you can find out. Once again, guys, as always, thank you so much for watching. And we'll see you next time right here on the Gridiron Expert.